Hey, this is Doug Jones from Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, Hellboy 1 and 2, Hocus Pocus, Pan's Labyrinth, and currently on Falling Skies. But today, you are listening to GenreTainment.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of GenreTainment over here at sci-fi-pulse-radio.com. Now, we've been on a break for a bit, but now we're back with new interviews, and we're going to christen this one Episode 1 of Season 3 or something like that.
Sure, why not?
And we're your hosts, Marx
and Julie, and GenreTainment is where we talk about what's happening in the world of film, TV, and web series. We give you interviews with writers, directors, producers, and actors in both independent and not-so-independent creations. Now, for today's show, we chat with actor and web series creator Johnathan Robbins about his various projects like Clutch, Asset, Out with Dad, and more.
So one of the reasons we took a long break was because of my new book. It's coming out in October. It's called Television on the Wild Wild Web and How to Blaze Your Own Trail. We've been really terrible about keeping track of episode numbers. So while we figure that out, we decided, because we're going to try to do an archive of episodes, we decided to start fresh for now with this being episode 1 of season 3.
And it is as good a random selection of numbers as any. Yes.
Why not?
Perfect designation. Okay. Now, before we get started with the interview, we do want to mention that the music you just heard at the beginning of the show was a snippet from the theme song for our web series, Reality on Demand. It's a song composed and performed by our friend T. Sean Hardy. You can find our web series at realityondemandseries.com.
And now our chat with actor and web series creator, Johnathan Robbins.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
So, Johnathan, how about we get started with you telling us how you first got involved in filmmaking?
From the beginning.
Well, I actually started as an actor. And from the very beginning, I was in science school. And I would have gone and worked for IBM like all my friends did and gone that route. But this calling in me was always there. I just never actually realized that acting could be a profession. That, you can just do that. And it wasn't until the first year of university that I discovered that, and I was in the student film and immediately fell in love with acting and switched, from what was going to be a little hobby and switched that to become everything I was doing and my main career.
Well, I'm sure your parents were thrilled.
Well, it's in the blood. My dad worked in television and my mom was an actor. She was, I actually found out she was an actress in university in my theater history textbook. When I saw a picture of her and Kate Milligan topless on stage.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you had to go into therapy for years later.
That's right. But they were kind of pushing me into the science, but they've both been extremely supportive. I think they just wanted me to be happy. And my dad knew how hard the industry was from having worked in it on the camera side. I think they just wanted to they didn't want to influence me in that direction, but they couldn't help it. It was in my blood.
That's cool.
Oh, great.
So I did very well as an actor for the first couple of years. Right off the bat, my first professional role was opposite Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. And that was a dream come true. I grew up, I idolized him growing up. So that was really awesome. And then my next one was opposite Will Ferrell in Superstar. These are just one lines, but, on set with these big, huge people who I adored.
Yeah.
And then it was going pretty well, but then it slowed down. And I was talking to a guy who had just graduated film school, and he was now working in a grocery store, and he had that missing the film thing as well. And I said, well, if I write something, will you direct it, with me in it? And he did, and we did that. And then he ended up moving to Vancouver before the film got edited. So if I wanted to get the film done, I had to learn to edit it myself. I didn't know any editors. So I bought an iMac DV. It was the second round of iMacs that ever existed. I got a graphite iMac DV and Premiere 3.0, and I learned to edit. And I found that I quite liked that. And then over time, I started directing my own films, at first with me in them, and then thinking, you know what, it's really getting in the way to do both. I'm just going to try directing and not be in it. And I like that too. And so directing became as strong for me as acting, and for a certain period of time, stronger than acting. And now I thoroughly love both and just kind of hop between, but totally self-taught on the filmmaking side. and did actually end up going to university for the acting side. So formal training in one and informal training in the other.
Now, we lived in Vancouver for a short period of time. We haven't, well, I've visited Toronto before, but we're
I've
not that
driven
familiar.
through Toronto.
Sorry.
And well, I couldn't see much of it. It was a torrential downpour the whole way. So it looked lovely, what I could see through the gray downpour.
It's not a particularly attractive city. It's very financial. There's no real architecture in this city. Yeah. But what it does have is a culture that exists behind the doors. There's a real multiculturalism in this city that is more so than I've seen in any other city I've visited. And I think the fact that the buildings are so neutral makes it a great filming location because it's easy to make it look like anywhere else.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, I remember I didn't really get to see a whole lot of Toronto, but we were driving through Ontario and then also driving through Quebec, and I thought that both provinces outside of the city, out in the country, it was beautiful. I thought it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And downtown Quebec was.
Oh yeah, I really liked. We went to Montreal.
Montreal, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Montreal, right? Yeah.
Montreal was beautiful.
And Toronto's where, in case people don't know, Sci-Fi Channel's Defiance is filmed, where Warehouse 13 was filmed.
Yeah.
So, but I'm wondering what the independent film scene is like in Toronto, though. I mean, obviously, very active web series creation being done there. Can you give us an idea, like what other web series and projects are being made out there?
Definitely the web series community is the strongest, and a lot of people that were previously in the independent film community have moved into the web series community. So I think in that sense, it's very true that web series is the new independent film. However, there are certainly a number of independent projects happening. I've been acting in a number of them, short films. I'm about to do a feature it's actually being shot up in Sudbury, but that's an Ontario independent film, and I would say it's strong. I understand in Vancouver it's mostly American productions casting small roles to fill themselves out, where I would say in Toronto the majority of work is actually Canadian homegrown production with some big American features like RoboCop and Total Recall that come in, and Incredible Hulk. I think usually one or two per year like that. Right now there's an Adam Sandler film shooting here.
Mm-hmm. And you are a member of the Independent Web Series Creators of Canada. I'm not going to try to.
Yes, I'm on the board.
And it's really exciting. It's cool because for a long time we were just the International Academy of Web Television. It was cool to see Canada create their own group. And tell us a little bit about that group and what it offers web series creators.
I think it's an important group to exist because one of the challenges that all web series face everywhere is funding. And having an organization, having a nonprofit incorporation makes it so much easier to approach other organizations and lobby for funding. They for one thing, they take you more seriously. We were able to put on the Toronto Web Series Festival, and it was we were able to do more with our money because we're a nonprofit incorporation. Whereas if we were just a group of independent web series creators, we would have been paying full price, and we wouldn't have been able to do as much with that. So I think simply the fact of organizing is the first step that gives us a lot of leverage. We've recently worked with a third-party company called Nordicity to do a survey of web series production. Now, it was an Ontario-funded survey, so it only covers Ontario at this time. But we had calculated or figured out that there's, I believe it's 110 web series creators actively working in Ontario, and we had, I believe it was 95 of them fill out this survey. It's a very, very high response. They said it was an unprecedented response, which shows the passion of the web series community. And as a result of that, we've been approached by Google and some other places who are interested in expanding that survey and taking it nationwide and eventually international. So I guess the first thing that we're offering creators is something you technically don't have to be a member to benefit from, and that's the lobbying for web series funding and greater awareness and knowledge of web series. So in that sense, being a member is being part of something you believe in and contributing to a cause. But we also make sure that there are some direct benefits for members. One of them would be the biggest one right off the bat is a discount to submitting to the Toronto Web Series Festival, so that you're making most of your membership money back right there and it pays for itself. There's some other discounts. We've organized one with William F. White's for production rentals. We also have roundtable discussions that are Google Hangouts with. We've had representatives from Smoke Bomb. We had Jill Golick from Ruby Sky PI, and it's a chance to join in this Google Hangout and ask them the questions you've always wanted to ask them for an hour. And then those are all available for members only. So there's certainly some direct benefits to being a member as well.
That's cool. Now, am I correct in that, or it could be completely off base? I thought for independent filmmakers up in Canada, is there some sort of, financing or financial help that people can get through the government?
There is, yes. There are various forms of arts funding. I guess, there's the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council. So on various levels and various forms of government, there is arts funding available in limited amounts. Mm-hmm. It's all on really shaky ground right now, whether that will last or not. Every year they say, we might not get it next year, and then it comes through. It's also extremely competitive. It takes a lot of work. It's a full-time job to apply for it. So it's not handout money. You definitely have to work for it, but it is available. Like the Independent Production Fund, for instance, for web series, had 180 or 190 applicants this year, and about 12 of them got money. So it's very competitive. But
yeah, I think that IPF's really great. I mean, it's really helped web series in Canada really grow. It seems like.
I remember when we were in Vancouver, I heard people talking about that, and we were like, what? The government helps give you money to help you make independent stuff? We call those credit cards here.
The IPF is not government. They are an independent organization.
Oh, that's great.
Had a charitable donation 20 or 30 years ago to perpetuate the arts, and they've designed themselves as a self-sustaining fund. So they're investing in projects looking to get money back from them. And they recognize that that's less likely to happen with web series. So most of their money comes from film and television, but they believe that the money will be there in web series, and that's why they're investing a portion of their funds into those.
Yeah, because it's just in the early stages now, just like, television, traditional television and traditional filmmaking had beginning stages too. And
for sure.
So now one of the web series that you're very involved in on multiple levels, and it's lived a few seasons now, is Clutch.
It still lives.
It lives. It's living right now. In fact, about half an hour ago, I was working on the script for the feature film continuation of the series.
Oh, great.
Can you tell our audience a little bit about what Clutch is about? I said about several times.
Clutch is a femme fatale action series about women who are faced with incredulous circumstances by ruthless men, be it mob bosses or human traffickers, and they fight back. They have to stand up for themselves and fight back. We go to the places that a lot of web series won't go, using dominatrixes and prostitutes and pickpockets, and take these underdog women and then make them the heroes.
Cool. Now, what was the inspiration for this?
The direct inspiration was that I just adored Robert Rodriguez films. I really liked the TV show Alias, and so ultimately I just kind of wanted to make a really cool thing with an ass-kicking girl, and wanted to kind of do it grittier than I had seen it done before to give it my twist. The real root of that inspiration comes from my mom, who has led a very interesting life, to say the least. She, at the age of about 55, became a nun, which was a real fight to join an organization who traditionally brought people in when they were young and didn't have a family. So to do that at her age and with a family, she really, really had to fight to make that happen. And she was sent to places where she really had to fight to survive. She lived in Kenya for 6 months, and worked in the places that wouldn't be on the map. They wouldn't be on the map because why would you ever go there? I mean, literally 200 tents on a square block in the middle of nowhere. I mean, this is the kind of place that she was working and doing what she could to make a difference as a missionary would. And so she's such a fighting woman that ultimately that fighting woman spirit translated into my stories. Now, she wouldn't approve of the fact that I have them fighting with guns, but it's the same spirit.
She sounds like quite a character.
Well, and if you're doing everything that your parents would approve of, you're not stretching yourself enough, you know?
Yeah. You'd make little children movies and make sure your parents don't disapprove of something. And then Clutch is gritty. There's a lot of violence. There's nudity and such. It's definitely like something more like you in America you would see on HBO or something in content.
With a very strong disclaimer.
But
well, I thought it was important to. A lot of people actually make fun of that. I just thought it was important. The internet, because there's no censorship, that works to our advantage for distributing it, but also to the disadvantage of, I wouldn't want someone to say, oh, I heard of this show and start watching it with their kid and not know. And
yeah.
It kind of seemed like the only responsible thing to do was to put a disclaimer beforehand. But
I'm a fan of those, actually, because I just think I'm a big fan of putting the information out there and letting people choose what they want to watch.
Yeah. And, it's also, as a filmmaker, was important to me with the nudity that it wasn't an exploitative nudity, that it was very much, I'm telling a story that lives in this world where that is part of the world. Mm-hmm. And to not show it would be the equivalent of the L-shaped sheets in movies. It's just, it takes you out of the reality a little bit. And I didn't want to do that in the story at all. And so we have male nudity, we have female nudity. But always in the edit, there was one, actually, Jeff Sinizak, who plays Mike, had a nude scene as well. And much to the dismay of many of our female fans, I had to cut it because it just didn't fit. He looked awesome. He had Donist up for that. Well, you can see him without a shirt on in one shot still, in one scene still. But it would have been exploitative to put it in. It would have been totally gratuitous, and so it got cut.
No, I'm just kidding.
That's what happens when an actor reads, oh, nude scene. All right, hit the gym.
Hit the gym. And then they go, you know what? We decided afterwards no. And he's like, damn it. I ate baked chicken and drank water and lifted weights every day for a month. I'm dying for pizza.
So how difficult was it getting Clutch started and maintaining it for this amount of time? Because it's, as we talked, I think as you mentioned earlier, web series, it's difficult to monetize, to make much of a profit off of it. I mean, that's getting better and better every year. But can you tell us a little bit about those challenges you faced?
For sure. It was difficult to start because at the time, web series were by most people considered really cheap or not worth their while as an actor. So my goal was to look as professional as possible and to attract actors that you would get going for a film. So I used a casting director and kind of had proper auditions that way. And proving that I'm right, Matthew Carvery, who plays Matt in the series and ended up becoming a producer of season 2. And of course, we went on to work together on Asset. He said that he almost didn't come to the audition because he thought, do I really want to, spend my afternoon auditioning for a web series? That was the general opinion of web series at the time by the majority of people. And then he showed up to the audition and he said, oh, wow, this is kind of professional. And then the other thing I did is that when we shot the first couple episodes, we had a full production truck with a crap load of equipment and a full team. And so people, I knew that I wanted to get these people's commitment for the next few years to keep working on this. And so, first impressions, right? They walked on and they knew that I was taking this very seriously. And it changed their impression of web series. And I'm not saying we were the first to do this. There were a number of people that had done it prior, but it still wasn't in the public mind that a web series could be like a film. And we wanted to treat this like a film. Now that cost a lot of money. That first 2 episodes, which was shot together, probably cost as much as the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't sustain it at that production level. But by then I had earned the loyalty of everyone, and they trusted that even if we cut back on the crew and the equipment, that we would still deliver something worthwhile. And so continuing, it was actually easier because now it was a team of people all invested in it. I don't even know that I would have done season 2 if it wasn't for the cast and crew saying, we got to do season 2. What's it going to take? So it kind of just became a force of its own. And to some extent, it's true that the creator still does everything. But now I've got people that I can ask to help.
And you said you're talking about continuing it with a feature film?
Yes, that is in development. Frostbite Pictures is producing it, and Gillian Clare, who plays Nicole, she won the Indie Series Award for that role this year. She is attached to star in it. It will feature some of the other famous Clutch characters.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense, you could call it a spin-off story. So it will be a standalone story that to a non-Clutch crowd will play just fine. But to the Clutch audience, there'll be added levels of detail to appreciate. And the script is almost done, and we'll go into the preparation and fundraising and whatnot to hopefully get that to camera in a year.
Great.
That's great. We'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's going to do. My goal is to do for film what Clutch did for web series, which is take an existing genre and elevate it. And that genre is the vengeance cinema, sometimes called rape films. And to take that idea and elevate it into something responsible that accomplishes the same goals without being exploitative the way many of those films were.
Now, you mentioned Asset, which is another newer web series that's on, I think it's on Just a Story right now, correct? JTS?
Yes, that's correct. The full season is available on jts.tv.
Okay.
We are looking at releasing elsewhere, but no firm plans have been made on that yet. It was an expensive show to make, and we want to make some of that money back, so hence keeping it behind the subscription paywall. But it's very worth it. If you wanted to binge watch, you could pay $3.99 and go and binge watch it.
Yeah. And for those people who don't know, JTS is it's like the Netflix for independent web series, basically.
Yeah. And they've got a growing amount of content, which is exceptional, and several shows, which you can only see there. Polaris, for one, Acting Dead, which Gillian Clare is also in. Some really, really great material. So what's nice is that you're not just paying for one show. You actually are supporting the independent community overall by subscribing.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and the advantage of watching it on jts.tv is that you don't have all those little pop-up ads and pre-rolls and post-rolls. That's why it's called Just the Story. It is just the web series you're watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since we mentioned Asset, what is Asset about?
Asset is a espionage thriller about a Canadian civilian named Eric Blair, who is played by Matthew Carberry, whose ex-girlfriend happens to have married a Russian arms dealer. The CIA has been trying to get at this Russian arms dealer, but he can smell a spy coming from a mile away. So they figure if they get this ex-boyfriend in there, then Valentin will never know that he is working with the CIA, and that's their way in the door. So he's got no training. They are a small operation out in Prague with a low footprint, so they can't be giving him all the fancy spy support and gadgets. So they're pretty much sending in a civilian on his own. And they know it's a dumb idea, but it's the only thing they've got. And
it's the best dumb idea we have.
That's right. That's exactly it. And we got to film it largely in Prague, so there's some really, really beautiful exterior shots there. And it's got a amazing cast. It's funny at times, but I'd say it's mostly a dramatic thriller for the Americans. And
No, we say dramatic.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
The IAW TV Awards, when I presented Best Actress in a Drama, everyone laughed, and I'm like, why are they laughing?
No, we say drama, but if you say dramatic, it's dramatic. But if you say a drama, it's drama.
Yeah.
So complicated.
The English language is not known for its simplicity in any form.
Well, he's speaking English too, just Canadian.
In any form.
Or
That's
British.
okay. The English think that they're speaking English too, but we know they ain't.
Oh, I know.
So that's Asset.
And I've seen some of it. It's really good. And what's the future of Asset? Is there going to be potentially a season 2, or?
It certainly will. Yes, we actually applied again with the IPF for season 2 funding, and we're very close to getting it. But ultimately, it's only been in release for a couple of months, and they kind of wanted to see where it goes and over the course of the year in terms of audience growth and whatnot, and asked us to apply again next year. So the hope is that indeed our audience will grow, and we'll pick up some festivals and some awards. It's playing, I believe, this weekend at the Melbourne Web Fest. Well, it is playing. I believe it's this weekend at the Melbourne Fest, which is pretty cool because they had very, very few official selections. It was tough to make that cut. So I think we are starting to prove that it does have some legs, and we just have to kind of keep doing that for the year, and then we'll have a good shot at getting that funding for next year so we can continue. There's no way we could do that show like Clutch on no dime because it's it is set in Europe for one thing, and it's just kind of a bigger production value story, so it needs the money to make it properly.
Mm-hmm. We often ask people what their funniest story on set is.
Yeah, for any show really.
Any show really. It doesn't have to be Clutch or Acid. It could be anything you've worked on.
Oh, there's so many funny ones from Out with Dad. But one comes to mind actually is an Acid story, since we were just talking about filming in Prague. We arrived in Prague on the first night, and even though we had just flown for like 19 hours, of course, we're so excited. We wanted to see the city. It was evening there at that time, like 9 p.m. or something. And so we went out and walked around the streets, and we saw somebody with a beer on the street. We're like, wow, this is awesome. You can drink on the streets here. This is awesome. So we went in and we got some local Czech beers, and we're walking around the street with them. And then we found out actually you can't walk around the streets. Some guy just was, but that doesn't mean it's legal. So, and apparently, we could have gone to jail that night if we were caught. So that was kind of funny, the realization that don't believe what it was just
because
like
someone's doing it doesn't mean they ought to be.
Such tourists. So that was pretty funny.
Now, you mentioned Out with Dad.
Yes.
And that's one I forgot to actually mention. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Out with Dad was the most magical experience of my life, truly. I met Jason Lever a couple of years ago. We were both at an event where you could pitch your web series to advertisers for potential funding. And he was pitching Out with Dad, which was then in its second season, and I was pitching Clutch. And we got to know each other as creators, and then we ended up both being finalists at the LA Web Fest that year, and then therefore we went to Marseille together, and we got to know each other in Marseille. So we had become quite good friends as fellow creators, and we were sitting in a bar in Toronto one night, and he confided to me that Will Conlon, who played Nathan, the dad in the show, was not going to be returning for season 3, and he was asking for, not advice, but, well, I guess, opinion and advice on how to handle that and what to do with changing the lead. And he said, I know for Clutch, your lead couldn't come back in season 2, and how are you handling that? And so we started talking, and I said something to the effect of, well, it's too bad I'm in the union, or I would love to audition for the part. And the way he tells it is something clicked at that point where previous to that, he had been thinking, oh, it's too bad Jonathan's not an actor because I'd love to have him audition for the part. And then he heard me. He's like, wait a minute, Jonathan Actors Union, that means Jonathan is an actor. And so we started talking, and then, circumstances changed. And for a number of reasons, I quit the Actors Union so that I could act in non-union material. And then it was possible for me to audition for Out with Dad, and I did audition, and it was the coolest audition. Kate and I did some scenes together, a couple of scenes which were from, I did the scene in the movie theater where Nathan thinks she's coming out to him. So I did a couple of existing scenes, and then a couple of new scenes from season 3, and Jason recorded those, and then afterwards we hung out and had wine, the 3 of us together as friends. So it was a really unique, wonderful audition. And he showed that tape around the cast and crew to ask their opinion, bringing in a new actor in such a pivotal role for the show. He really wanted to make sure that everyone was on board with it. And I sat in suspense for quite some time until we had an event of some sort. I don't even remember what it was, maybe watching the Oscars. I don't remember, at his house. And we're all sitting there, and Mike Donis arrives, and he says, "Oh, hey, Jason, so have you found your new Nathan yet?" And I'm like, oh, uncomfortable. Like, what if maybe I didn't get it, or he's not ready to decide? I just kind of uncomfortably looked away, and then Kate says, "Well, we did." And it took me a moment to realize that everybody was looking at me, and that was all planned, and that's that he was offering me the role.
Oh, that's great.
So, just an awesome experience right from the start like that. And then the first day filming, the first scene you see in season 3 is the first scene we shot. And it was very symbolic. The first thing I did as Nathan was placing that couch down, and the characters are off to a new start, and literally it is a new start with me in the role.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, Mike said to me, he said, "You know what? You don't seem like new Nathan to me. You just seem like Nathan. It just fits." And it was the nicest thing that someone could say. And the entire cast and crew gave me that vibe. I felt right at home. And as perfect as Will was in the role, and I think he was perfect, and as loved as he is, I think I've been lucky enough to receive that equal attention and feeling and response from the fans. And so we truly share the role. And the response has just been phenomenal from people that have accepted the changed face.
It's always an element in web series I've always been a little nervous about, because you have these ongoing, seasons, and you have to worry about whether or not your cast can keep returning, especially on independent budget.
Yeah, it's nice when it works out.
Yeah, I mean, I know like Super Knocked Up, they had to change their lead in season 2 also, and so I'm glad that it looks like fans embrace that. I always get nervous that fans would be like, "What? What's up with this?"
But they do it in soap operas all the time.
That's true.
It'll be like this voice.
Did they do that? Is their voice whenever you first appear?
The role of Dad will now be played by Johnathan Robbins, and then they just continue on.
We talked about other famous roles that have been done the same way. James Bond, Doctor Who, of course, and there is the Nathan Regeneration theory right now. Bewitched, of course, the dad in Bewitched, the husband.
You should like walk into a closet and come back out a different guy.
My personal theory is that Will Conlon, who had a role in Clutch, he guest starred in the second episode of the second season, and Caitlin Medrick, who plays Lex in Clutch, and Claire in Out with Dad, tortures him in that scene. So my theory is that there was some reconstructive surgery.
There you go.
They exist in the same world, but I don't think Jason likes that idea.
It's the seedy side of Out with Dad.
We did mention IPF. So I'm kind of curious, how difficult is it to apply for that? What kind of hurdles do they make you go over?
It changes every year, so I don't know exactly how it'll be next year, but it seems to be kind of growing upon itself. Beginning last year, they started having people create a concept trailer. They call it a concept video. I guess most people interpret that as a trailer to show your idea. And that, in some senses, made it harder for people to go through that first stage, and in some senses made it easier, because it's allowed them now to take the time to build the world and begin finding your audience and all of those things So that's stage one. So you put that trailer out, and for about a month they're monitoring the response of it. They're monitoring how many views it's getting, how people are reacting to it, what they're saying about it. Their own opinion of it's a demonstration of your skills. Mm-hmm. So that's like 180 or 190 did that. And then they'll invite between, I think, around 30 to 50 of those to go into the second phase, which is the hard one. The second phase is a lot of paperwork business. You have to have a complete budget, the scripts, the production plan, the marketing plan. Our application was about 100 pages. It's a lot of paperwork over a period of a month. So I guess I would say in that sense it's difficult. You really have to know what you're doing and what your plan is, and have attached as much as possible to it. As many distributors that will give you letters of intent to say that they will distribute it afterwards. If you can get big name actors attached to it to say they'll be in it if you get the funding. All of that stuff will help you. It's not essential. I mean, certainly some shows that didn't have things like that got funding, but it'll go a long way to getting you in the door. So a lot of work in advance, and then still your chances are so slim of actually getting the money.
Do you know how many people apply every year? I mean, have you ever given those numbers out?
Yeah, so there was 180 that made the trailer and put that up and went through the first round, and then something between 30 and 50 that did all the paperwork and everything for the second round to shoot for the money at that point.
Oh, wow.
And how many people get it?
About 12.
Wow.
It's better than the lottery.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And, you know, if you play your cards right, that work won't go to waste. Because what we had last year with Asset, I became involved with Asset when it hit the second stage. During the first stage, Jason Lieber and I had a project together called Dance by Day, which was about a modern dance company in Toronto, fictional modern dance company. And we did the trailer for that, and you know, it had probably 4,000 views and lots of positive response. Things were looking pretty good for it, and we didn't even make the second round with it. So you never quite know what they're looking for and what's going to fly. But luckily, I knew enough people in Asset that when it made the second round, they brought me in as a co-executive producer and co-writer and co-director. So I still had my work. but you know, you can't spread yourself out too thin either. So there's a very good chance that none of the projects you're attached to are going to make it forward. There was a couple this year that I was sure were going to get funding and they didn't. So you never know.
A lot of times whenever you create a television series, they suggest you create like a Bible of your series, which is essentially like a guidebook of the characters and plot lines. Do they have you do that for that fund or something like that?
Absolutely, a Bible is part of the application. Yeah, the more information you can provide about what you're doing, and I guess that's what I meant by if you play your cards right, that work won't go to waste. Because you know, now I've got this show called Dance by Day with Jason, which is kind of all ready to go if we find a way to pay for it. And that might be crowdfunding, that might be some sort of dance funding, or we might scale it down and figure out how to do it for less money and do it out of pocket. But the work is all ready to go. The plan is there, the scripts are there. So in that sense, even though you're doing this work and you might not get the funding, well, you've helped develop your show. So it's not for nothing.
Yeah, you know, there's opportunities that could have come about with that. So there weren't there before. Now, we've talked already about quite a few, I think, tips if people are listening who are web series creators and stuff. But is there anything specific that you would like to give as a tip to someone who might be listening, who's either a web series creator or maybe an actor, because you have quite a bit of acting training and background, that you might like to share?
I think as an actor, I find doing a web series is really no different than any other project, other than the fact that if you are a recurring character, I think you should seriously plan on committing yourself to a long time to the project and make sure it's a project and people and a character that you are in love with enough to do that. Because it's doing a disservice to yourself and to the series if you're only intending to do it for a quick fix. But if it's, you know, a team you want to become involved in, I guess just know, you know, like the people, like the script, like everything about it enough that you're going to want to do it for a long time. Mm-hmm. And as a filmmaker, everybody always says this, it's make sure you get good sound. But it's easy to say that and hard to understand what that actually means. A lot of people will misinterpret get good sound. Okay, well, we'll just get a good sound recordist. There's more to it than that, though. You have to make sure that you're building for sound as much as you're building for picture. You choose locations based on what they look like, but you need to pick locations which are conducive to recording good sound. And if they're not, then you have to plan on ADRing those scenes like we did for a lot of the exteriors and Asset. And planning the ADR means that you have to budget for it. You have to put all those things in place. And then not just having a good sound recordist, you can have a great sound recordist, but if you don't have a good sound designer and a good sound mixer, then all that great recording is going to go to waste. So there's so many levels and elements to sound, more so than picture, I would say, that the best thing you can do to get good sound is to hire your sound recordist, your sound team in advance, and talk to them and ask them, get them involved in the pre-production so that they can help you make sure that you're going to be creating something that's conducive to the sound. It could even be a wardrobe choice that you have for a character where if you're undecided between two types of clothes, they'll be able to say, well, that's noisy clothing. The labs won't work very well on that shirt, so pick this one instead. Just getting them involved in that process will really help.
I'm so glad you said that. My biggest pet peeve for filmmaking is bad sound. If I can't tell what people are saying, I don't know what's going on, or it's like really loud and soft and then loud, You lost me. I don't care how pretty it looks. I don't care how good the acting is. I truly, truly will hate the film. I just can't even sit through it. It's just so maddening.
Yeah, it's
And
something
you can take great sound and put it with really ugly, gritty images and still have an awesome film, but you can't do the other way around.
Yeah, and it's unless someone has, I guess, either seen a show with really bad sound or really screwed it up once themselves. It's hard to sometimes explain to people that it's the sound. The sound is the problem, or what'll save it, or what'll kill it.
For sure.
Yeah, an audience will always notice bad sound.
Yeah, because I mean, so much of the stories is cued to you by the sound. If you can't understand the dialogue, it's like I have no idea what's going on between those two characters.
And it'll take you out of the reality if there's a phenomenon on Canadian television where a lot of it is made so quickly on such a low budget. Now, this isn't true of the good stuff like Orphan Black or Flashpoint, but a lot of the smaller shows, they have great recorded sound, and then they take that and they mix it, but that's about it. There's no other sounds. You just hear the on-set footsteps and the dialogue, and it's really clean sound, but it's empty. And building that sound design and giving it full ambiance and the right Foley and all of those things really help sell the reality to people so that you're not disassociated from what you're watching.
Yeah, it really does add to the production value more so than anything, I think.
And you don't want a ghost who has footsteps. I just saw a show, a big budget show that did that, and I was like, what?
Also, why don't they sink through the floor?
Well, that's
Why don't they what?
Conversation.
Why don't they sink through the floor? If they can't touch anything, if they're a ghost, why can they touch the floor?
That's the Kitty Pryde X-Men question.
Exactly. How does she not just go zoom? Oh, there she goes. What was that, Kitty Pryde? Sometimes she just sort of like slides through. She can't really stay in one place very well.
Yeah, somehow we went from good sound to intangibility causing you go through floors. Yes, I don't know how we did that.
So sorry.
But I'm glad you said that, because a lot of my freelance work in the past had been as a boom op or sound mixer, and definitely.
And he does it really well.
Well, and I appreciate whenever someone, because that's always the last person I ever think of usually. It's that sound, like, oh yeah, let's do a giant, big, wide shot and with like a hollow room with no carpet or anything. And you're going to boom it, okay?
You're going to boom everybody. And there's like 8 people.
And we have like 3 people that are like different corners of the whole room, and they're all in the same shot.
And we like to do it in one.
Yeah,
well, a good example for anyone to see, like, we had an awesome sound recordist for all of Clutch, but we couldn't afford a top-notch sound mixer for all of Clutch. We had a good sound mixer, but if you look at, say, episode 208 and then compare it to episode 210, you can tell which one we spent the $1,000 extra on a pro sound mixer. But it was the same recorded sound. So I think that it just shows that you really have to pay attention to every level of sound, not just one stage.
Oh yeah, for sure. Everybody thinks about the camera, they don't think about the sound mixer. So sound.
All right, the sound just isn't as sexy as the camera.
I don't know. There's sex phone operators, right? But, so,
can you tell we're tired?
Are there any other projects that you would like to mention that we forgot to cover, or any upcoming projects that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, there's a couple others to plug. I just did my ADR for Pete Winning Season 2, which was, speaking of sound, which was a ton of fun. I have a small role in it, but I maybe had the most flattering comment I've ever been given as an actor by the sound mixer, who, so the sound mixer and person who does the score for Pete Winning is Aaron Sang. He won the ISA this year for Pete Winning. He's also the sound mixer for Asset. So I'd been working with him for a while as a director on Asset. And he knew that I was the dad in it with that, but so he knew I was an actor. But when I showed up for my ADR, he was confused as to why he was there. He said, "Oh, I didn't know you were helping like run the ADR session or whatever." And I said, "Well, I'm doing my lines." And he had seen the part and he had watched it and gotten all ready. but he didn't recognize me. So he didn't realize that was me. He's like, "Wow, you're full of surprises there, Mr. Robbins." So that was a pretty cool compliment that I disappeared into the character enough that even someone who knew me didn't recognize me in it. So it was a really fun cameo. So that's coming up. And that'll be released in August. And Out of Time, I believe, goes live in September. I'm in the pilot of Out of Time. Not the pilot, the first episode. And I've seen that at Geo Web Fest, and it's quite well done. It's got a really extensive cast from the Toronto Web Series community. So you'll see a lot of cameos in that. But I'm in that first episode.
All right. Well, thank you so much
hopefully
for talking
someone
to us.
will be talking on a podcast someday going, I found on Netflix this really cool movie, Clutch. And anyway, check it out.
That'd be fantastic.
I have
The film actually is... no, I'm not going to give away the title. It's not called Clutch, though. It's got its own title. But that's...
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this
Thanks for having
episode.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Au revoir. The only French I know.
Sayonara.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Let me down easy, or let me fall. I don't really care. Just let me go now. Down here.
Hey everybody, this is Jordan Gibson. I play Dark Star on Super Knocked Up, the web series, and you're listening to GenreTainment.
Well, thanks to Johnathan for speaking with us, and we've included in the show description the links to some of the shows that we've discussed, so you definitely want to go check those out. Now, also before we go, we do want to remind you that you can keep track of us on our GenreTainment Facebook page, Marx's Twitter account, which is @Mr. Marx, our website at GenreTainment.com, or all of the shows at SciFiPulseRadio.com.
So that's it for today's GenreTainment. We'll be back soon with all new guests from our favorite films, TV shows, novels, and web series.
GenreTainment is a production of Alien Jungle Bug Productions.
Until next time.
Bad monkey.